adapt me to a water environment. This snorkel lets me breathe underwater. This mask helps me to see underwater, and these fins help me swim faster. Living things don't put on gear to adapt to their environments. Instead, over many generations, the features that help them survive in their environment are passed on. Eventually, the whole group has the characteristics that allow them to survive and reproduce in their environment.
Hey guys, so today we're learning about adaptations. In your journal, let's create a page that gives us the definition for the two kinds of adaptations that you have to know. Title it Adaptations. So in this video, you're going to learn about two kinds of adaptations. The first kind is called a structural adaptation. A structural adaptation is something special on an animal's body or a plant's body, and it helps it to survive in its environment. So a correct definition for structural adaptations would be structural adaptations are features on an organism Structural adaptations are features on an organism's body that help it to survive in its environment. Barely squeeze that in there, environment. So think about that for just a second. What kind of animals can you come up with as an example, or plants as an example, that have a structural adaptation to help it survive in its environment? Now remember, this adaptation is going to be on the body. You can see it. So for example, porcupines have quills on their body to use for defense. You can see the quills. Certain plants have thorns. You can see those thorns. What can you think of? Then we have another kind of adaptation, and it's special. We have behavioral adaptations. Behavioral adaptations are actions or behaviors that help an organism to survive in its environment. Now these are different from structural adaptations because you can't see them. These are in the brain. They're pre-programmed, something the animal already knows how to do. For example, a bear already knows to hibernate. Nobody has to teach a bear to hibernate. It just knows. Its brain tells it when to do it. And this is an adaptation that has allowed bears to survive in specific environments. Now both of these kinds of adaptations are inherited. Do you remember yesterday when we were talking about inherited and learned? What this means is they are both passed down from parent to offspring. Both structural and behavioral adaptations are inherited. Passed down from parent to offspring. Remember that an offspring is a baby. And it could be a baby animal or a baby plant, because baby plants have parent plants too.
Characteristics to help an organism survive and reproduce are called adaptations. Adaptations may first happen by chance, but creatures that have them tend to do a little better and have more young. So generation after generation, characteristics that make an organism better suited to its environment are more likely to be passed on. Over time, more and more individuals in a group of organisms have the adaptation. To see underwater and cover my nose, I had to put on this mask. Beavers have adaptations for that, a membrane over their eyes and nose plugs. Most features that you can see are adaptations. Adaptations help animals hide, avoid predators, catch prey, find food, and survive harsh weather. Living things can have two kinds of adaptations. Organisms' physical adaptations to their environments are called structural adaptations. For example, the bullfrog's camouflage helps it hide, and its strong leg muscles make it a great jumper. The great horned owl's excellent hearing and night vision help it locate prey in the dark. Their sharp talons catch and hold prey, and their curved beaks help them tear food apart. Porcupines have structural adaptations that make them painful to catch. Their quills are thick, loosely attached hairs with tiny barbs at their tips. Porcupines can't shoot their quills. They come out easily when jumped on or bitten. Sometimes the porcupine swats its attacker with its tail. When a porcupine is threatened, it turns its back. This protects its belly and face, which don't have quills. Turning its back to an attacker and swatting with its tail are behavioral adaptations. The way an animal acts helps it survive in its environment. These actions are called behavioral adaptations. Other behavioral adaptations help animals survive harsh conditions. For example, the migration of songbirds in the fall to find food. Birds that don't migrate, like the wild turkey, have behavioral adaptations for dealing with snow. They dig through snow to find acorns and other seeds. Many animals have behaviors that help them survive winter conditions. Sometimes an animal uses a combination of structural and behavioral adaptations. Box turtle shells protect the turtle from predators. When the turtle is threatened, it pulls in its head and legs. Snapping turtles don't have strong bottom shells to protect their legs and tail, so they swim away when threatened. If threatened on land, they defend themselves by snapping with a long neck and powerful beak. Adaptations help animals survive, thrive, and reproduce in their environments. Adaptations have to do with the way an animal is made, the way it acts, or a combination of the two. But one way or another, the animals that survive in a particular environment are the ones with adaptations to that environment.
Now back in your journal, you won't have enough room to do this next portion on the same page, so flip the page and title it Adaptations again. Don't skip pages. Go to the back of the page if necessary. And then we're going to turn our journal landscape position so that we can create a tree map. So again, you're going to write adaptations at the top. You're going to split it into two. On this side, we're going to write structural adaptations. And on this side, we're going to write behavioral adaptations. This way we can kind of keep a list of items that we need to remember. So for structural adaptations, there are many, and we're only going to write down a few of the most important ones for fifth graders. So there are special adaptations that involve an animal's teeth. So teeth are structural adaptations. This would also include beaks. So some animals are herbivores. These animals would only have teeth that were flat in order to grind their plant material. Some animals are carnivores, so these animals would have very pointy teeth in order to rip and tear meat. And some animals are both, which are called omnivores, so they would have a combination of pointy, sharp teeth and flat teeth for grinding. And then, of course, you have birds with beaks, and their beaks are shaped differently depending on what they eat. So I wrote these down really quickly. You may need to pause the video in order to catch up with me. A few other structural adaptations that are important. One would be feet. So an animal's feet can be specially adapted for their environment. They can be webbed like a duck. They could be sticky in order to help them climb. The size of their feet are sometimes important. There are certain kinds of animals that have big, large feet to help them from sinking into the snow. The shape of their feet. And if they have talons, like on birds, to help them snatch up their prey. An animal's body covering is also a structural adaptation. So we have special things on the body like blubber or fat to help keep an animal warm. I was going to write warm instead of fat. So blubber is fat. We have fur. Certain animals have camouflage. I'm just going to write camo. Certain animals have a special adaptation called mimicry. We'll talk more about mimicry soon. Some animals have scales. Some have shells. There are also adaptations to get oxygen. So for breathing, I'm just going to write for O2. So we have some animals have lungs. Some have gills. Some have holes in the body like insects that they breathe through. Some animals actually breathe through their skin. There are many more structural adaptations that we are not going to list on this page. Just keep in mind, these are a few of the ones that you have to know. Let's talk about behavioral adaptations. We can break these down into two specific kinds. One of them is instinct, and this is pre-programmed in the brain and passed down from parent to offspring. And then there are some things that animals learn in order to survive in their environment. So we're going to classify these together. Remember, the learned behaviors are not passed down from parent to offspring. So instincts that are passed down from parent to offspring that are inherited would include being hungry or thirsty. An animal just knows this. Getting water, they're driven to get water. Whether or not they're nocturnal or awake at night. How to defend themselves. Animals know if they need to defend themselves. Migration, flying south for the winter like birds, or butterflies moving from place to place. And hibernation, like bears and other animals who go to sleep for winter. So the only learned behavior that we're going to write down is the one we already talked about, and that would be how animals must learn to be a good hunter. So the learned behavior of how to be a good hunter is not inherited. This is taught. It has to be a learned skill. Some other things that animals learn, for example, is they learn like what animals and plants to eat, if they will harm them. So if an animal goes and bites into a cactus and pokes its mouth, it learns that's not a good choice, so it probably won't eat that cactus again. Or if an animal maybe goes after a porcupine and gets poked with quills, eventually it will learn that maybe that is not an animal it would need to hunt. So we may come back to this tree map later and add some more things on here, but these are the most important ones that you need to look at and be aware of and to study.